You'll be told it was an accident. A freak storm that ravaged the Dominican Republic before slamming into us. You might even get to see pictures, doctored ones, showing a menagerie of stragglers being rescued off the coast of the Caymans. That's if they decide to share anything with the media at all. Considering the amount of hush money we were given to keep quiet, I'm seriously doubting it. $190,000. That's what they gave each of us. They told us this was the compensation for the hardship we endured. But it doesn't erase the scars. I've tried drinking them away. I've tried self-medicating. Nothing is going to work to make it stop haunting my dreams. My wife has it even worse. Since we returned, she hasn't spoken once. The shock of what we went through hitting her harder than a sledgehammer. I can't keep quiet anymore, even if I want to. It's gnawing away at our sanity. I would ask God to forgive what I must attempt to recount, but after what happened those days on the water, I'm not sure he even exists anymore. There are certain moments that I can recollect with little to no effort at all. The moment the fog rolled over the top of our cruise liner is the first that comes to mind. I was out tanning, the middle of our second day. We were just about 6 hours away from our first port of call in Mexico, and then an air horn disturbed my afternoon nap. A dozen things happened at once. A heavy gray mist was pushing its way across the bow of the ship. It stretched the length of the horizon like an insurmountable wall. I sat up and followed the bewildered crowd toward the inner safety that the ship offered as the clouds grew thicker and it became nearly impossible to see. The panic started a few moments later when the power to our deck abruptly faltered and nearly 300 of us were standing in the darkness trying to make sense of this. One of the passengers from our group, Craig, said he thought he saw something else moving amid the mist. "Maybe it was the Coast Guard," another asked. "I have a pair of binoculars," a third responded. I took them and pushed through the crowd to the open-air tanning deck, leaning against the side rail to get as good of an angle as possible to see. What I gazed upon changed our vacation from a dream getaway into an absolute nightmare. "It looks like another ship out there," I said as the leader of our group, Isaac, joined me at the rails. He took the binoculars to confirm it as I heard my wife calling my name.
"Logan, what's going on?"
Sarah asked. "It doesn't look like they've altered course. They might not know we're out here, what with our systems down." Craig realized as he dashed off to find one of the crew members. Just a bit of bad weather," I reassured my wife as I wrapped my arms around her and we waited for Craig's return. The remainder of our group came on deck, along with throngs of other passengers, all of them peering toward the vessel with interest and commotion. It was already clear to see the other ship was also a large luxury ship like ours. A few security officers began to insist that everyone should go back inside. "Why should we go inside? If they ram us, it won't matter where we are," a new older man named Lincoln pointed out. A few other passengers started muttering in agreement, some whipping out cell phones to try to take a picture of the vessel. It was still too far away to really be able to see anything, though. Then, amid the noise, a sharp whistle was blown. A strong, muscular man found a pedestal to stand on and get everyone's attention as he glared down at all of us like we were little kids. "Listen up, everyone. Security Director Jacob Brooks speaking. I have some updates from the bridge crew that relate to our current situation."
"Wait, why isn't this being broadcast over the PA?"
an elderly woman muttered. "That's part of the issue we're having. It seems we hit a snag and our systems are completely down." The commotion he'd managed to quiet down was growing loud again, so he blew the whistle until everyone shut up. "Now, ordinarily, we would rely on our backup generators to get things running smoothly again. However, there seems to be a malfunction with them as well, leaving us in the water without much to fall back on," he explained. "How the hell does that even happen? I thought this ship got 5 stars. One irate passenger yelled. More chimed in. Then I made a startling discovery that changed everything. "Hey, my cell phone just died," I said. A few near to me checked theirs and noticed the same thing was happening. Nothing electronic seemed to be working. "What's going on?" Isaac asked next to me. I didn't know for sure, but now the fog was thicker than ever, and it was becoming difficult to see. We had no clue how close the other vessel was to ramming us. Everyone that can, reconvene in conference room S13, and we can go over some standard emergency procedures. But if you cannot attend or make it into the conference room, please return to your rooms to await further instructions. Jacob shouted, but most of us weren't listening to him by then, because the ship had gotten closer. We realized it was another cruise ship, but now, even amid the heavy fog, we could see the decks were devoid of life.
Look!
Sarah shouted, covering her mouth in shock as she pointed toward the side of the boat. There, scrawled in what appeared to be human blood, that was a message that was as wide as a car and stretched down the side of the cruise liner. Help us. The commotion was hard to calm down as Jacob whistled again and again, but finally he had enough and fired a warning shot with his service pistol into the air to calm the crowd. "Now that I have your attention," he muttered as he holstered the weapon, "the last thing we need to do right now is panic. We have no idea what happened to them or why, so there's no reason to assume we're in any danger. For now, it's merely in our vicinity and causing us distress. Nothing more, nothing less." "Then what should we do, sir?" Isaac asked. "I need to go up deck and check with Deputy Captain Vioch about our current situation. In the meantime, it looks like I'll need to deputize a few men here, since most of my regular staff actually took their own vacation when we left port from Galveston. I'm 4 men down. If any of you feel you're up to the task, speak now." Jacob barked. Sarah gave me a little nudge. I looked at her like she was crazy, then she smiled nervously. It was the type of smile I hadn't seen for a while. I raised my hand alongside a scrawny young man named Lincoln and another guy of the group. I think his name was Declan. Mr. Brooks didn't offer us any sort of firearm, but he told us to keep the peace on this deck until he returned. Easier said than done, really. Just in that small group of 19 that I came aboard with, the speculation of what had happened to the ship was starting to spread.
Something must have killed everyone on board. A virus, I'm sure,
the elderly woman, Bonnie, said as she started to knit furiously. "Oh, that's rubbish. I'm sure the ship merely experienced some fatal miscalculation, and that left them stranded out on the open water without a means to contact the land." A newcomer named Thomas suggested.
You mean like we are?
Sarah said blandly. That got everyone to quiet down, as it was the first time any of us actually had to face the fact that we had no clue what had happened to our own ship. "I guess it could always be worse. At least we still have a buffet," Isaac joked. But I didn't feel like making light of anything just yet, especially when I went to the rails again and noted how the other crew liner was right alongside our own. The scrawled bloody message even easier to read. It looked like it had been written quite some time ago, months possibly. I remember wondering if we would be trapped out here that long. "We should board it," Craig suggested as he appeared from the upper deck stairs. "Did you find one of the bridge crew?" Sarah asked him anxiously. "They're all too busy trying to handle more commotion on other decks. It's getting crazy all across decks E through K," he said. "I can't imagine trying to keep this many people calm," Isaac said, shuffling about and wrapping his arms around his body. I did the same. Suddenly, it was extremely cold out there on the deck. "It's going to get worse unless someone goes over there to get answers," Lincoln agreed. A few others also joined with Craig's sentiment to attempt a crossing. "But that's crazy. We don't even have anything to cross with," I argued. "It's better than sitting around here and doing nothing," another passenger said. Other passengers were listening in on the argument. I knew it would be impossible to settle them down soon.
Even if we wanted to cross, there's nothing here that can do that,
Sarah said. Kevin and Declan seemed to take that remark as a challenge and started to search the deck for anything that might help them with their foolish plan. A few moments later, they returned with a heavy tow line. "This ought to do the trick," Craig suggested. I knew it would be pointless to stop them, so I did the next best thing and decided to go aboard as well. We had also managed to convince a few more men to join our would-be scouting operation. Thomas, Raymond, and Greg. There might be supplies we could use for our own voyage, materials to get the engine up and running, he was saying as we made it to one of the upper decks. The tow line was so heavy, we knew the only successful way to snag it on anything would be with a downward throw. "Heave-ho!" Craig shouted as we made our first toss. "Heave-ho!" He shouted again, this time with more emphasis after we pulled up that heavy tow line. It took us 5 tries. 5 tries to toss that huge thing and get it hooked to one of the side rails near the ship's middle deck. By the time we had finished, nearly a half hour had passed, and I was exhausted. "I'll stand a look on this side," I offered as I caught my breath, and explained to Mr. Brooks what it is we're doing here. The leader of the posse teased. They had me figured out. I didn't want to confront the security director again, so we gathered a few blankets for each of us to create a makeshift zip line, wrapping them tight around the rope and then our chests. Raymond led the way, yelling cowabunga as he slid to the mysterious vessel. "This is such a bad idea," Greg muttered. I realized it was really too late to back out of it now, and since Sarah had already agreed to stay in our room, I couldn't think of any more excuse for not joining the group aboard the strange ship. I have to admit, though, that rush of air and mist hitting me as I slid across 2 massive cruise liners like some damn Tomb Raider, man, it made me feel 10 years younger. But any excitement I had was quickly replaced with worry and dread as we began to explore the quiet catacombs of the other vessel. "Bizarre," Thomas muttered as we walked to one of the still open doors to the inner hallways. Not a light flickered as we moved, but all of us were quick to notice that there was some sort of strange sticky substance that coated most of the walls and floor. "It must be some sort of after effect of the mist," Craig suggested. "Hey, some of these staterooms are open," Thomas said, kicking a door aside and trying to look inside the darkened suite. "Anybody think to bring a flashlight?" Marcus said nervously. We could only barely see our own reflections in the shattered room's mirror. I took out a small flashlight that had a mini light on it. It wasn't much, but it did the trick. "My God," Thomas said as he covered his mouth, and we saw to our horror a body slumped over the bed. It wasn't just the fact that this man was dead. His entire body was caked in barnacles, as though the ship had been stranded on the bottom of the ocean for a century. His corpse was now as much a part of the ship as the deck we stood on. "Guess they didn't all abandon ship," I said grimly as we moved toward the upper deck. "We need to see if there's any crew aboard," Craig said, hastily kicking on doors and trying to find any signs of life. There was nothing. Finally, we arrived at the bridge and stared down at the shattered instruments and broken windows in defeat. There was so much of the strange, slimy silk blocking up the room, we couldn't even go in to see if there was anything worth retrieving. "What in the hell?" Craig said as he used his mini light to peer toward the tanning deck just a few decks below, where once hundreds of sunbathers had likely sprawled out to bathe. Instead, in their place, we saw to our shock that at least a couple dozen bodies were scattered, their heads severed and their organs spread across the shiny surface of the deck like discarded trash. They looked like they were running from something. Attacked. "We need to find the black box and figure out what happened and get out of here," Craig ordered. None of us disagreed with that sentiment. Raymond made the suggestion we go to the generator room, but none of us really knew where that was. So instead, we made our way back to the open-air deck where the bodies were found and used a map from there to determine the best route. "Through this dining hall, down a few more floors, shouldn't take long to get there," Craig said as he memorized the map. We did as best we could and followed one of the emergency stairwells nearby to reach the lower decks. Every step we took felt more ominous than the last. It was hard to see where we were going with such limited illumination, and the further down we went, the more the annoying substance that coated the ship was blocking our path. Eventually, we made it to one of the massive indoor pools, where the only thing giving us any sort of luminous glow was the reflection from the water. Raymond covered his mouth in horror as one of the headless bodies drifted near us in the grimy pool water. He stumbled backwards into the stairwell and fell into a mesh of silky substance that seemed to be spreading faster across the ship. Frantically, he coughed and swallowed some of the silk as he fell and fumbled with it, which of course caused him to freak out even more. Craig and I helped him to his feet, and I muttered, "Stay calm, man. Nothing here can hurt us." I don't know if I said that to reassure him or myself. At the moment, I knew the only thing that mattered was we needed to keep moving. "We can't go that way," Thomas observed, noting that the substance made the steps slick and difficult to walk on, and then shining a light across the room toward the entrance to the dining hall. "Maybe we can find some food supplies too." he suggested. We didn't need to be told twice. The four of us moved through the hall, not making a sound amongst us except for the occasional cough from Ray. Pushing open the dining compartment doors, I drew a sigh of relief when I saw a flicker of light from across the wide room, but it didn't last long. As we got closer, I realized that although the candles themselves seemed to be recently lit, the only thing still remaining in the middle of the buffet was a fresh corpse. It was a child, no older than 8 or 9, with his chest exposed and his vital organs carved out. I remember vomiting. I think Greg and Ray did too. It took every ounce of strength for me not to pass out as I pushed away from the malicious scene toward another stairwell. Calm down, Thomas urged me.
They ate him. Whoever survived, they ate that poor boy.
I stammered.
There's nothing we can do about that.
He growled. Craig nervously reached in his pocket and smoked a cigarette.
God damn it. I never seen anything like that,
he said, his hands visibly twitching. Raymond and Thomas did their best to try to push forward toward the lower engine room, none of us even daring to speak of the massacre we had seen above.
Over here,
Greg announced excitedly once we found the right room, and he opened up one of the emergency conduits, only to find that most of the wiring was fried or beyond repair.
Well, guess that shouldn't surprise me,
he said with a laugh. The rest of us weren't listening. My eyes were on Craig. He was moving toward the back wall, where more of the system's panels were tied into the massive generator deeper below. His eyes not wavering from the lettering stamped on the side of the wall near to our location.
You guys are seeing this too, right?
He asked. I remember my mouth went dry and heart dropped. It was the logo for the cruise liner, followed by the name of the ship itself. Everything mirrored the same ship we had boarded only a day ago.